During normal movement, it climbed to just over 40, but once the shooting started, it fell back to around 30 frames per second. Then I pushed it further by switching to high settings. The GT730 ran at 100% load, with temperatures hovering around 63 degrees Celsius, struggling to maintain just 18 FPS. It was clearly running at its limit. Good enough for very light gaming or casual use on old hardware, but far from smooth for Fortnite. Next up is a card that got a lot of hate over the years. The GT1030, 2GB of GDDR5. Released in 2017, it was Nvidia's ultra-budget option for people who just wanted something better than integrated graphics. Let's see if this forgotten GT1030 can finally redeem itself in Fortnite. At low settings, the GT1030 with 2GB of GDDR5 VRAM delivered around 90 FPS in Fortnite. A huge leap compared to the entry-level cards we tested earlier. Gameplay felt smooth, responsive, and surprisingly consistent, making this little card a solid choice for light competitive gaming at 1080p, as long as you keep the graphics settings modest. After switching to high settings, this GPU dropped to around the mid-20s in FPS. The game was still playable, but noticeably less smooth, showing that the card was being pushed close to its limits, once higher visual effects and textures were enabled. Now we're saying goodbye to the GT series, and stepping into the GTX era. The GTX 750 Ti with its 2GB of ROM marks a serious step up, not just in performance but in presence. Unlike the tiny cards we've seen so far, when it launched, the 750 Ti changed what people expected from budget gaming. Now, more than a decade later, let's see if the GTX 750 Ti still has some fight left in Fortnite. At low settings, the GTX 750 Ti, 2GB of ROM, delivered around 80 FPS, slightly lower than the GT1030, but the overall experience was noticeably smoother. Frame pacing and frame time stability were better, with consistent GPU utilization, fewer micro stutters, and smoother motion throughout the match. It's a clear sign of stronger driver optimization and superior rendering stability, even with that small drop in average frame rate. After switching to high settings, the GTX 750 Ti, 2GB of RAM, dropped to around 30 to 35 frames per second. The GPU was running at full load, clearly showing that it had reached its performance ceiling. Frame delivery became less consistent, with visible dips during combat and heavy visual effects, confirming the card's limited bandwidth, and 2GB RAM constraint under higher graphical workloads. Alright, let's switch things up a bit and move over to the red team. This is the RX 550 with 4GB of GDDR5 RAM. AMD's entry-level card designed for